Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to build a complete Excel VBA invoice generator tool that not only lets you generate professional invoices from a user form, but also export them to PDF and emails them automatically through Outlook. This is a full project tutorial for intermediate to advanced Excel VBA users who want to build real world tools that actually save time and boost productivity. First, let me show you a quick demo of what we are going to build. So here I have created an invoice template in Excel file. The top section, it has an invoice label and our company details. And in the middle section, I have created invoice number and the invoice date. And in the right hand side, the customer details. And in the middle section, we have the item information. And in the turn, we have the subtotal and the grand totals. And last, we'll have the label for thank you for business. This is the invoice I have created in Excel, which will export in PDF and also send them to the customer via Outlook. And I have created another sheet which will store the information of invoice details which we have sent. And with the help of this information, we will generate the invoice number automatically. So here I have added a button to open the invoice generator tool. So let me click on this generate invoice button. It will open this VBA user form. And here you can see as soon as this form is open in the right hand side, you can see the invoice number is generated automatically. And here on the top, we have the customer details where we will take the customer company name, email address, phone number, and the company address. And in the bottom, we have the invoice item details where we will feed the item description, the number of hours we spend, and the hourly rate amount. And also we have given an option to enter the discount and the tax rate. And in the footer, we have the generate invoice button and the send invoice button. Generate invoice will generate this invoice into PDF and send invoice will send that PDF to the customer. And the left hand side, we have the reset button to reset the information what we have entered on this screen. Now let's generate an invoice using this invoice generator user form. So let's enter the company name here and the company email address and the phone number. Next, we'll enter the company address. Now in the bottom section, we'll enter the invoice item details. So the item description here is logo design and the number of hours which we have spent is around 2 hours. Now you can see here I have entered the numeric value. So this text box is designed to accept only the numeric values. If I try to enter any non-numeric value, it will remove that text automatically. So it will allow user to enter only the numeric values. If I try to enter any text here, you can see it's removing automatically. Right? So let's enter the number of hours as 2, hourly rate as 120. You can see the total amount is auto-populated here. Right? So let's click on this add button here. You can see that item got added to this list view. And also you can see the subtotal and the grand total is also showing automatically here. So let's add another invoice item here. So thumbnail design. So we spend around 4 hours and hourly rate is 120. You can see the again the total amount is auto calculated here. So let's click on this add button. You can see that new item is also got added here and the grand total and the subtotal and grand total is also calculated automatically. If you want to give any discount, you can enter that discount value here. So here we have a 720, right? So let's give a discount as a 20 rupees here. Then you can see that grand total is showing as a 700, right? Not only that, assume that if you have entered any incorrect value here, and you want to edit that. So all you have to do is just select that row which you want to edit and click on edit button. So that information will populate it on this text boxes here. Now we can make changes here. So instead of 4 hours, so we spend around 5 hours here. You can see that total is calculated automatically. And as soon as you click on edit button, this add button caption will get changed to the update now. It means that we are in edit mode, right? So let's click on update button here. You can see that 480 got changed to 600 and also the total amount is also got updated. Now, not only that, if you want to delete any of this item, you just have to select that and click on delete button here. So it will give you a warning pop-up here whether do you want to remove this item or not. If you click on yes, that item will get deleted from your list view, right? So let's add that item back again. Enter the number of hours as 5 and the 120 as the hourly rate, right? So let's click on add button so that item got added here. If you want to give any tax, right? So let's take, we are going to take around tax rate as 5%. So I'll enter here as a 5. You can see that subtotal and the grand total calculated automatically here, right? So let's click on this generate invoice button to generate this invoice into PDF. So let me click on this generate invoice button. You can see all the information got feeded on this invoice template and it's generated the PDF file. So let's click on OK here. And first let's see what information it's feeded in this invoice template. You can see the logo design and the thumbnail design, all that information got feeded here. And exactly same total we can see here, right? So let's see how this invoice got generated in PDF file. So let me go to the folder. You can see that invoice got generated here, right? So let me open this. You can see how clean the invoice is generated in PDF, right? So this PDF file will send via Outlook, right? So let's do that. Now go back to our macro file. Now instead of click on generate invoice, let's click on send invoice button here. You can see that invoice got generated successfully and it sent also. So click on OK. Now if I go to the Outlook here, you can see that new email is got ready. And you can see in the to address, whatever email address we entered for that customer, that email address is populated here. And also the invoice is also attached and the basic email body. It's pretty cool, right? And the best part is I will walk you through every single step of building this from scratch, including all the codes, layout design, PDF automation, and Outlook integration. All right, if you are ready to automate and impress your boss with a powerful invoicing tool, let's get started by building our invoicing template. But before we get started, if you like this content, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more excellent VBA automation tutorials. The first step is to create a clean professional looking invoice layout inside Excel. This template will fill dynamically using our VBA user form later on. So let me close this invoice generator user form and we'll add a new worksheet here and we'll rename this as invoice new. Now let's design the invoice layout here from scratch. So let's go back here. You can see in my invoice template here, I have given an empty column in the A and I have given an empty column in I column, right? And the size which I have given here is as very less. So let's take this column width, which is a 2.11. So let's add that A and I column and set that 2.11 as the column width. Now let's copy this starting from B to the H. So you can design your own invoice template as per your requirement. So let me copy this and we'll paste it here. And we'll paste the exact same weight what we have in our invoice template here. So let's select this first row here. Open this paste special dialog box, select this column width and just click on OK. And you can resize this first row as per your requirement. So let's keep this something like this, right? So here in C column, I have combined the C and D and have given the label as invoice in the bold letter, right? And in this G column, here I have entered my company name, the company address, the postal code, the phone number, and the email address, right? So now let's add the invoice and customer details here. Copy this and go to the C column. Here we'll enter the invoice number and the invoice date. And we can keep these two cells blank and we'll feed this information dynamically using a VBA user form, right? And in the right hand side, we'll enter the customer information here. So let's copy that. Go here. And first thing, we'll enter the company name, next address, phone number, email address. And again, same, this information will fill using our VBA user form, right? Now let's add the itemized table here. So let's go back here and we'll copy the exact same information from this invoice template. We'll paste it here, right? So here we have the item number column, the item description, the number of hours we spent, and the hourly rate. And last, we have the amount column here. So let's add the formula to calculate the amount here. So we'll use the if condition here and we'll use the is blank function to check whether we have any value in hours column or not. If it is a blank, then we'll give it a blank value. Else we'll calculate the amount here. And for that, I will use the if error function here and hourly rate, hours into the rate. And if we get any error while calculating this amount, that time we'll give the blank value here, right? So let's close the bracket for the if error and close the bracket for the if condition and hit enter. So it will add that formula to all the rows here because this is the official table format. So all these formulas will get added automatically till our last row here, right? Now let's add the subtotal section here. Now go back to our main invoice template here. Now let's copy this and we'll paste it here. So as soon as we paste, the table design automatically formatted this, right? So let's press the Ctrl Z to undo that. Now we'll just have the subtotal values, right? So here we'll add the formula to calculate this total amount, right? So let's delete this and we'll use the if error function here and we'll use the sum function and we'll select all these rows, right? While doing the sum for this amount column, if you find any error, at that time we'll give the value as 0 here, right? Now close the bracket for if error and hit enter. Then next we'll have the discount value here. So for now, let's make it 0 and we'll clear the values from this itemized table, right? So let's delete this. Then next we have the tax rate here. So make this tax rate as also a 0. Then next we have the tax calculation here. So what we are going to do here is, now here we'll write the formula to calculate the tax here. So again same, we'll use the if error functions and we'll multiply this subtotal with the tax rate here. And if we get any error, then we'll give it a 0 here. Now close the bracket for if error and hit enter. Now let's add the final grand total formula here. So what we are going to do here is from this subtotal, we'll subtract the discount and we'll add the tax here, right? So this is the formula we'll use to get the grand total. We'll hit enter, we'll have that value here. Now at last in the footer, we'll add the thank you for business label here, right? So let me go back to the invoice template here and I will copy this exact same label and I will paste it here, right? So our invoice template is ready. So now let's remove this grid line to make our invoice template neat and clean. We'll go to the view menu and we'll disable this grid lines checkbox. Now you can see our invoice is looking very professional, neat and clean, right? So here I will give you some styling tips here. Make sure to format your cells with clear borders, use bold fonts for labels, and apply currency formats like how we applied currency format for this our subtotals. And you want your invoice to look professional and easy to read when we save this as a PDF. So make sure to give a very nice font, bold size, everything, right? Because when you export this invoice into a PDF, that should be very easy to read. Now that our invoice template is ready, let's build the VBA user form to input customer and invoice data. So that form will let users fill in details like the customer details, invoice number, the item details like hours, rate, and amount, and then push that data into this invoice sheet with just one single click. Press Alt plus F11 to open the VBA editor. Now here, go to the Insert menu, click on User Forms. It will add a user form to this Project Explorer and select that user form 1 and go to the property window, click on this and name and change this name to form invoice new and give the caption name as invoice entry form. Now let's design the invoice generator user form here. So we'll increase this height and width of this form. Now let's adjust the height and width of this form. And I will adjust this width to a 706 and height to the 478. Right? So if I go to the invoice user form here, so on top section, we have the header and we have the footer, right? So let's add that header and footer to our user form. And to add that header and footer, we'll use the frames here, right? So go to the toolbox and look for the frame here. So this is our frame. So let's drag and drop here. And we'll set the left property to the 0 and the top property to the 0. And the height will give it as 30 to this frame here. So where is that height? So it's here. So let's set that to a 30. And the width of this form is 706, right? So let's give the exact same width to this frame here. So we'll set this to a 706 and we'll remove the caption from this frame and also we'll remove the this style for this frame. So the special effect it's will select this as a flat here and we'll change the background color to something this color, right? So copy this same frame and paste it here and set that at bottom here, right? And we'll set the manually, we'll set the left property to 0 and the top will make around 418 here so that it will sit at the bottom. So just increase this to a 420. Now it's set in the bottom of this user form, right? So now we got the header and footer. So let's add labels to this header. And just to save time, we'll copy this label from our user form here. So I will paste it here. And to do that, we'll set the property to 8 here, right? And the left property to around 16 here, right? Now our header is ready. So let's add buttons here to the footer. So how many buttons we have in our footer? So we have a three buttons, right? So let's copy this buttons and we'll paste it here. Or else let's make this height little bit increase. So we'll send this to a 32, 34. So you have to do trial and run to make your user form neat and clean, right? Now our header and footer is ready. So let's add this top header where we are showing our invoice number and the company name, right? So let's go back to this user form and we'll copy the exact same frame from here and we'll paste it here. And we'll change the background color to some little grayish type of color. Where else will go? Okay, so this is looks good, right? So now let's set this to a top property. So we'll set this to around 31, right? So that it will sit right down to this header frame, right? So let's set this to around 29. Now on this subheader, we are going to show the invoice number and the company name, right? So let's rename this label to a company name and give it a name here as label company name. And here we are going to display the invoice number, right? And we'll change the font color for color here and select that black. And we'll set this company name color is also a black here. Yep. So let's increase this size and remove this. And here we'll show the invoice number, right? So let's rename this label to a label invoice number. So our subheader is also ready. So next we have to add this customer details and the invoice details section, right? So here I am using a frame for the customer details and another frame for the invoice item details, right? Now let's go back to our user form. Let's add a frame here. So we'll copy this exact frame and we'll paste it here, right? Now let's make this a smaller size and we'll delete this and we'll delete this label also here, right? So next change the background color of this frame and we'll make the background color as white, right? Now let's set the height and width of this frame here. So the height, this left property will make it as a 6 and the height property will make this as to 120, right? And we'll make this top property as 68 and we'll set the width something this one. Now let's change the style of this frame here. So for that, select that frame, go to the special effect and select this bump effect, which will give you a nice, neat and clean look of this frame. You can see a little bold border around this frame. So that will give you the very nice look when you play this user form. Now let's add another frame for the invoice item details. So let's take a copy of this frame and paste it here and we'll set this. So height will set to a 210 and the top property will set this to a 196. So which will set exactly down to this customer detail frame here, right? So let's add a label here which says customer details here. If I go back to my user form here, you can see here we have a label for customer details and here we have one bar line to differentiate customer details and this text boxes, right? And just to save the time, so I will copy this bar line and I will copy this label from here. And I will go back here and we'll paste here and we'll set this here, right? Now, if I play this user form, you can see this is how it will look when you play this user form. You can see a little gray bar line is showing up here, right? And here we have the customer details, right? So let's add the same thing for the invoice details also. So let me go back to the invoice user form here. and we'll copy this one also, and we'll paste it in this frame, right? So we are done this. Now let's add a text boxes for the customer details here. So let me go back to the invoice and let me copy this. Just to save time, so I am copying this text boxes and labels from my previous invoice generator user form. So let's go back here and we'll paste it here. So let's adjust this, right? So we are done with this. Now let's copy the same for the invoice details also. We'll go back here. So let's copy this, go back to the invoice new user form, and we'll paste it here. So let's adjust this. All right. So we are done. So here in this invoice detail section, here I am using a list view here. If you did not find list view in the toolbox, you can just right click on this toolbox on empty space, click on additional controls and look for the list view here. You can see Microsoft list view control version 6. Find this and enable that list view control here and click on OK. So that will get added to your toolbox here, right? So it's here list view. List view will give you neat and clean look like a tabular format, how we have in Excel sheet like rows and columns, right? At this stage, we are only creating the UI, no code yet. Don't worry, we will write all the VBA code shortly, including how to transfer the data to the sheet. Right, so what we have done here, so we have added the header and the footer. We added the customer details. We added the invoice details also. Now that our user form design is ready, let's add the VBA code that will do the heavy lifting, reading data from the form, adding it to the invoice sheet, calculating totals, and resetting the form for new entries. So let's start writing the VBA code for this user form. I have renamed the control names for all these text boxes and the buttons and for the list view. And this is the name I have given for all these text boxes and buttons. If you want, you can pause the video and take the screenshot. Now let's start writing the VBA code for this user form. So first and first, so once this form get loaded, first we have to populate the invoice date. We have to populate the invoice number here, and we have to populate the headers for this list view. So double click on this user form and click on this second drop down on the top right hand side and select initialize here. And let me remove this code. Now here what we will do is first we'll populate the invoice date in the invoice date text box with the today's date. Then next we'll populate the headers and the list view property will set to the report and we'll set the full row select equal to true, grid line equal to true. And then next we'll add the 5 columns to the list view. The item number with 100 width, description with 250 width, number of rows with 70 width, hourly rate with 80 width, total amount with 80 widths. Now next after that, what we will do is we'll have to populate the invoice number also, right? So for that, we'll write the separate sub procedure to generate the invoice number. So let's copy this and we'll create a sub procedure here. How we are going to generate the invoice number here? So the logic is very simple here. First, we'll take the count of today's date from the invoice data sheet. If I go back to the Excel file, so here we have the invoice data sheet, right? So from this first column, we'll check whether we have how many times the today's date is repeated here, right? So we'll take the count of today's date and that count will store in the decount variable. And after that, we'll use the invoice inv keyword. Then we'll give the hyphen. Then we'll format the today's date with month, day, year. And after that, we'll format the decount to 5 times 0, something like this. So now assume that the today's date count we got as a 1. So we'll add a +1 and we'll format with the 5 times 0. So this is how our invoice number will look, right? So that we are doing here in this step. So the keyword, and we are formatting the invoice date to the MMDDYY. Then we are taking the count of today's date and we are doing a +1, and we are formatting with the 5 times zeros. So that invoice number will be stored in the invoice number variable. And after that, we'll populate that invoice number to the invoice number label. If I go back to the user form, so this is our invoice number label here, and the name is label invoice number, right? So we'll populate that invoice number there. Next, go back to the form here. Next, we'll write the code for this company name. So here we have to populate the company name, right? So whenever we entered anything in this text box, we have to populate that same company name to this company name label. So double click on this and we'll type me dot label company name dot caption equal to me dot text company name dot value. So whatever we enter, that same will get populated there, right? So let's save this. Press F5 from the keyboard. You can see the form got loaded here, and the today's date is populated in this text box. The invoice number is also generated and populated here, and the item number, description, hours, rate, and total amount column also populated in the list view here. Now, if I type anything in this company name text box, you can see exact same name is showing up here in this company name label, right? So let's close this form. Now let's write a code for accepting only the numeric values, right? So here we are going to enter the numeric value. Here also we are going to enter numeric values here and here. So let's write a code for this our text box, right? So double click on this. So here what we will do is, here we'll check whether the whatever value we entered in the text box, that is numeric or not. If it's not numeric, then we'll reset the text box to the blank, right? If we have a numeric value, then we'll check whether we have any value in our text box and rate text box. If it is a blank, any of the text box is blank, then we'll set the total amount text box to 0. And if I go back to the user form here we are populating the total amount, right? Manually, we are not populating. So whatever value we entered in these two text boxes, based on that, the total amount will get populated. So our multiply with the rate, right? So if I go back to the code, so that is what we are doing here. If we find any of the text boxes blank, we'll set the amount to 0. Else, we'll multiply the hour with rate, and that value will populate into the amount text box, right? Let's copy this. Now, if I go back to the form, the same functionality we have to add to the rate text box also. If I double click on this and paste the code here, and all we have to do is we just have to change this txt hours to the rate here. So here also same, we will check that rate text box is numeric or not. If non-numeric, then we'll reset to the blank. Else we'll check whether we have any value in either of the text box or not. If not, then we'll set to the 0 in the amount text box. Else we'll multiply hour with rate and populate in the amount text box, right? Save this, and if I press F5, now you can test this here. So if I enter here 1, it accepted. As soon as I entered any text, it will remove that and it will reset to the blanks. And same for the hour rate also. If I enter any numeric, it will accept. As soon as I enter any text, it will reset to the blank. Now if I enter 2 and if I enter here 50, you can see, so it's got multiplied and the total amount is populated in the text box, right? So let's close this. Now let's write the code for the delete button here. Double click on this delete button. Now here what we will do is, first we'll check Whenever user click on the edit button, first we'll check whether we have any item in our list view or not. If not, then we'll give a message to the user that list is empty. After that, we'll check whether the user selected any item in the list view or not. If the user did not selected any item, then we'll give a message to the user that please select an item to remove. If user selected the item, then we'll give a message to the user that do you want to remove the item or yes or no. So here we are using a message box and with the VB yes no option here. And we are showing the selected record index number to the user. So which record you are going to remove. If the user select as a no button, then it will end the macro. If user click on yes button, then it will store the selected record index number. And then next it will use the remove property of the list view to remove that record from that list view. As soon as that record got removed from our list view, we have to reset our subtotal value, right? We have to reset our grand total. For that, we'll write the separate sub procedure here so that we can call this sub procedure from the add button, from the edit button, and from the delete button also. So let's copy this. We'll go all the way to the down here and we'll create a separate sub procedure here with the update total, update grand total name. So here what we will do is first we'll loop through the list view to get the total amount, right? If I play this user form, you can see our total amount column is this one, right? And the list view column starts with the 0. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and the 4. So fourth column. So this is called a fourth column. Basically, it is a fifth column. List view starts with 0. So this becomes the fourth, number 4 total amount. So we have to loop through the rows to get the total amount, right? So let's close this. If I go to the delete button here, go to this definition. So this is what we are doing here. So we are looping through the list view and getting the total amount value from the fourth column, and we are adding to the subtotal variable. So subtotal variable plus the fourth column value. So by this we'll get the total amount. And that total amount we are storing in the subtotal text box. And if I go back to the form here, so here we added the subtotal text box, which will show the total value from our list view. Right now, go back to the code again. Now, after that, we are getting the discount value from the discount text box, and we are getting the tax rate percentage from the tax rate text box. Now we got the subtotal amount, we got the discount amount, we got the tax rate percentage. Right now, after that, what we will do is first we'll get the tax amount. So how we will get tax amount? In the tax rate text box, we'll enter the whole number like 5, 10, 20, something like that, and that value will divide by 100, so that we'll get, now assume that you entered as a 5, so when we divide by 100 we'll get the 0.5, which is a 5 percentage, and that value we are multiplying with the subtotal. So by this we'll get the tax amount. Once we get the tax amount, what we will do is we'll subtract the discount amount from our subtotal. So subtotal minus discount amount plus tax amount. So by this calculation, we'll get the grand total. And that grand total we are populating in the total amount text box. If I go back to the user form here, so you can see here we added the grand total text box. So whatever value we'll get after calculating, that will show up here in this text box. So let's go back to the code here. So that value, whatever grand total we'll get, so that will get populated in the total amount text box. So let's save this. Now go back to the user form. Let's add a code for the edit button here. So double click on this edit button. Here what we will do is, again same, first we will check whether user selected any item in the list view or not. If not selected, then we'll give a message to the user that please select an item to edit. After that, we'll extract the selected record index number. So whatever record the user will select, that record index number will extract, and that will be stored in the edit index variable. And we need this index number to edit the record. So let's create this variable as a module level variable. And to create that, go all the way to the top here and create that variable as integer, right? The reason for creating this module level is by this will come to know that which record we are going to edit. So that will get stored here, and using that index number will populate the values to the description text box, to our text box, and the rate text box. From where we will get this value? From the list view. If I play this user form, so description is the 1, number of hours is the 2, hourly rate is the 3, right? So 1, 2, 3. So let's close this. So here we are extracting the value from the column 1, column 2, and column 3, and we are populating in these 3 text boxes, which is our description text box, our text box, and the rate text box. And once we populate that, we set the property is editing variable to true. So by this we'll come to know that we are in edit mode. So let's create this variable as a module level variable. Go all the way to the top here and create that variable as a boolean type. Now by this, whenever user click on the edit button, now we'll come to know that we are in edit mode. And once we set that is editing variable to true, we'll change the caption of add button to the update button, to the update value. Now if I go back to the user form here, so initially the value of this button is add, right? Once we click on edit button, this value will get changed to the update. So dynamically, we are switching the caption of this one button to add or update. Right? So let's go back to the edit. So that is what we are doing here. So by this we'll come to know that which record we are going to edit, that index number will get saved, and is editing will set to as true. So by this we'll come to know that we are in edit mode and we are going to edit this index in our list view. So let's save this. Now let's go back to the user form. Now next we'll write the code for the add button here. Double click on this add button. Now here what we will do is, again first we'll validate the input values, whether user entered any value or not in the text boxes, right? So first we'll check the description box is empty or not. We'll check our text box is empty or not. Rate text box is empty or not. If any of this text box is empty, we'll give a message to the user that please fill in all the fields, and the macro will end here. Then next we'll check whether we are in edit mode or not. So you remember when the user click on the edit button, right? We are storing the that selected record index number and the is editing, whether it is a true or false, right? So that variable we'll use here to check whether we are in edit mode or not. If we are not in edit mode, then we'll add that records, whatever value we entered in these 3 text boxes, that value will populate to the list view, right? For that, first we'll check what is the existing count in the list view, right? By using this list item dot count, and to that we'll add a +1. If we don't have anything, we'll get the 0 plus 1. So the item number is 1. If I play this user form, right? So here we are adding the item number, right? So the logic for getting this item number is whatever record we have, that record plus 1. So by this we'll get the serial number here, 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. So let me close this, go back to the add button. So we'll store that item number, then we'll set the new record list item, and we'll use this add property to add the item number, right? So this will get added to the first column with the value as either 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Then next we'll use the sub item to store the value as a description in the first column, hours to the second column, rate to the third column, amount to the fourth column. So from where we are getting this? From the description text box, our text box, rate text box, and the amount text box. So likewise, we'll add the item to the list view. Now think that we are in edit mode. So what will happen? It will go up here. So here we'll use that index number. You remember once we click on the edit button, we are storing the selected record index number, right? So we'll use that index number to set that record. So under that record, we'll replace the whatever value we entered in the text box in hours, rate, and the amount. So the whatever value we entered in these three text boxes, that value will get added to the list view, only to that selected record, right? And once we updated that list item, we'll reset this IS editing to the false. Now by this we'll come to know that we are not in edit mode. Then next we'll change back the add button caption to the add value, right? So once the edit is done, we'll reset that button caption value to the add, and we'll change the IS editing variable to the false. After that, we'll clear the values from the description text box, from our text box, and from the rate text box, and we'll set the amount text box to the 0. And we'll make that description text box as a set focus so that the text box will be active to add the next item, right? And once we either add or edit, as soon as we are done with that action, we have to reset our grand total. So for that, we are calling this grand total sub procedure. So you remember we created this grand total sub procedure while writing a code for the delete button. So we are calling this grand total sub procedure from the add button and from the delete button, right? So we are done with the add button code here. So let's test this so far here. So let me play this. If I type anything here in the description text box like a test, we'll enter the number of hours as a 2, hourly rate as a 10. So we got the total amount as 20. If I click on this add button, you can see that record get added here. You can see the item number is showing as a 1 because the initial count was 0 plus 1, and the number of hours, rate, and the amount. And this text box has got reset to the blank. You can see the subtotal and the grand total is also populated automatically, right? So let's close this. Let's write a code for this discount text box. So let's double click on this. Here what we will do is, here also we'll check whether whatever value we entered in that text box, that is a numeric or not. If it is not numeric, then we'll reset to the blank, right? If it is a numeric value, then we'll call the grand total sub procedure, right? So you remember this grand total will use the subtotal, discount, tax rate, right? So it will use all these values to calculate the grand total. So let's copy this code, go back to the form, and we'll write a code for this rate percentage. So double click on it and we'll paste that exact same code here also. And we'll change this to tax rate. So here also same. If that value is non-numeric, then we'll reset to the blank, else we'll calculate the grand total, right? So let's save this. Now go back to the user form. Now let's write a code for the reset button. So let's double click on this reset button. Now here what we will do is we'll reset all the text boxes to the blanks. So how many text boxes we have? If I go back to the user form, we'll reset this to blank. We'll reset this email address, phone number, company address, this description, hour, rate, and this list view. So everything will reset once we click on this reset button. So that is what we are doing here. So we are setting the empty value to all the text boxes, right? So here we are using this clear function to remove all the items from the list view, right? And after that, what we are doing is we are getting the invoice number. So whenever we click on the reset button, we have to get the latest invoice number generated, right? So for that purpose, we are calling that invoice number sub procedure. So you remember we created this invoice number sub procedure at the time of writing code for the user form initialization, right? So this will generate the new invoice number. Save this. Now go back to the user form. Now let's write a code for generating the invoice. Now let's double click on this generate invoice button. So here what we will do is first we'll validate the input values, right? So we have company name, email address, phone number, company address, right? If I go back to the user form, first we have to check that whether user populated this information or not, right? So we have to check whether the user enter all this information or not. So go back to the code. So that is what we are checking here. If any of these text box is blank, right, then we'll give a message to the user that customer details missing, please enter all the customer details, and the code will end there only. Then after we'll check whether we have any item details or not in our list view. And if we did not find any item in the list view, then we'll give a message to the user that invoice item description missing, please enter item description, and the code will end up here only, right? So this is our validation before generating the invoice. Then next what we will do is we'll populate the information to the Excel file. So whatever information will enter in the form, that information we have to populate in the Excel file. Now if I go back to the Excel file here and go to this invoice new sheet, so here we have to populate the invoice number. Here we have to populate the invoice date, the customer details here, and all the item informations here, right? If I go back to the code, so in the G10 cell, we'll populate the company name. Then next we'll populate the company address. Then next phone number, email address. So this four information will get populated here, right? Then next we'll populate the invoice number and the invoice date. So that will go up here in these cells, right? After that, we'll clear the items, whatever data we have in this rows, right? We have to clear that first before populating the latest information. So this line will clear the items from that. So the range is C17 to F24. So here was the C column and the 17th row. And if I go to the all the way to the F column to the 24th row. So everything will get clear from this data range. Then next we'll loop through the list view to populate the each item information to this table. So that is what we are doing. So first we are getting the item number, which will get populated in the item column. Then next we are populating the description, which will get populated in the description column. Then next we are populating the, to see, so we are populating the hour and the rate, right? So we are populating all this information. We no need to populate the amount value from the list view because we already have the formula in the amount column. Once we enter the hours and rate, this amount will get calculated automatically. So we just have to populate only this four column values. So that is what we are doing here, right? Then next we have to populate the discount. Whatever discount we entered in the user form, that same we have to populate here in this cell. Then next we have to populate the percentage, the tax rate percentage. So that value will get populated here, right? Then next we'll generate the PDF. And to generate the PDF, we will write the separate sub procedure, right? So let's copy this and we'll go all the way to the down here and we'll create a separate sub procedure here with the name as generate PDF. Now here what we will do is first we'll set the range export. So which range we want to export to PDF. So in our case, if I go back to the Excel file, so we have to print starting from A1 cell to till I37, right? So we have to export this range of data to the PDF. So that is what we have given here. starting from A1 cell to I37 cell. So this range we want to export to the PDF. So that value will get stored in this range to export variable, right? Then next we have to create the invoice folder. So where we are creating an invoice folder, where what? So where we save this macro file, right? Under that folder, we are creating a new folder called invoices. If that folder is not exist, then we are creating that folder. So that logic also we added here. So first we'll check whether that folder is exist or not. If not exist, then it will create. Then next we are creating the invoice file name here. So we are using the invoice keyword, and then next we are using the invoice number. So D10 cell, right? So if I go back to the Excel file, this is where we are populating the invoice number, right? So we are creating a file name with the invoice number. Go back to the code. Then next we are using the current system date and time and the extension as .pdf. Then next we are creating the full file path. Then next we are checking if that file is already exists, then we are deleting that so that we can have the latest invoice file. And that invoice file path we are storing in this variable. And we need this invoice file path to send it via Outlook, because this is a separate sub procedure to generate the PDF. And to send the PDF via Outlook, right, we need the file path, that invoice PDF file path. So that we need that. So that's why we are storing that invoice file path to this variable. So let's create this variable as a module level variable. So name invoice path as string. So by this we'll come to know that this is the file which we have to attach to the email. Right? So let's go back to the code. Once we get that file path, we'll use that range to export as a fixed format. Right? So we're using this range, the property we are using as a export as a fixed format. And we'll use the type as PDF. And this is the file name we are giving, and the quality we are giving as the standard quality. So this will generate the PDF and it will get saved in this file path. And once we export that PDF file, we'll end the macro. And if we get any error while generating this PDF, it will trigger this error message. Now, if I go back to the generate invoice button here, right? So that is what we are calling that generate PDF sub procedure. And once that PDF is ready, we'll give a message to the user that invoice generated successfully, right? So let's save this code. Now go back to the form here. So we are in the final step here. Now let's write the code for the send invoice. So double click on the send invoice button. Here what we will do is, again same, first we'll check the input values, whether user entered the details or not. Same like while generating the PDF, we are checking, right? In that same way, we have to check that whether the user entered all the details or not, like the company name, email address, phone number, company address, right? And whether the user added any list item or not. So before sending an email, we have to check that. So that is what we are checking here. After that, we'll regenerate the PDF. Now think that while using this invoice generator user form, user did not click on this invoice button. User did not click on this generate invoice button. They directly clicked on in send invoice button. So what will happen? Will not get the invoice file path, right? So that's why we are making sure that whenever user click on the send invoice button, we have to regenerate the PDF. So that is what we are doing. So this generate PDF, we return this separate sub procedure, right? So this will get called up here. And once that PDF is generated, we'll send the invoice to the customer. And for that, we'll write the separate sub procedure. So let's copy this and we'll go all the way to the down here and we'll create a separate sub procedure with the name as send invoice email. Now here, what we will do is, here we'll create the object for Outlook.application. Then next we'll create the item, Outlook mail item, right? Then next we'll add this properties here. the to address. So we have to get the to email address, right? So from where we will get this? From the G13 cell. If I go back to this in Excel file, so here we are going to populate the customer email address, right? Which is a G13 cell, right? So from this cell, we'll get the to address. And the subject we are giving as invoice from Excel VBA Studio. So you can customize your subject line. Then next we are writing the simple email body here. We'll just say, dear customer, please finally attach your invoice. Let us know if you have any questions. So this is a very simple email body I have added here. So for sure, you can customize your email body based on your requirement. Then next we'll use the attachment property here to add the attachment. So here we are using this invoice PDF path variable. You remember while generating the PDF, we are storing that PDF file path in this variable, right? Which is the module level variable. So from this variable, we'll get the PDF file path to attach to the email. Then next we'll use the display property here to display the email. If you want to send email directly, you can use this dot send, which will send the email directly without displaying on the screen, right? So let's add a comment here. Then next we'll set the Outlook app object to the nothing, which will release the memory, right? Now save this. Now go back to the user form and go back to the send invoice button here. So once this invoice sent to the customer, what we have to do is we have to store that information in our invoice data list so that we'll have the record, the history or the archive records. And using that record, we can generate the next invoice number. So what we are doing is we are getting the last row. If I go back to the Excel file, here we are using this invoice data, right? So here we are going to populate the information like the invoice date, the invoice number, the company name, and the total amount. Right? Go back to the code here. This is what we are doing here. So we are getting the invoice date from the user form. We are getting the invoice number. We are getting the company name and the total amount. And once we populate all this information to the invoice data sheet, we'll click on this reset button. So you remember we have added the reset button here, right? So we'll call that reset button. And after that, we'll give the message to the user that invoice successfully generated and sent. Let's save this. We just built a complete Excel VBA invoice system that capture the invoice data via user form, write the data to the formatted invoice sheet. It will generate the PDF and then next it will send the email to the customer, right? So let's save this. Now we are done with the code, right? So let's test this code. So before we test, we have to set our print area. So let's go back to the Excel file. How we can set the print area. Right, so let me expand this menu bar. So which area you want to print in PDF? So that area you have to set first. So let's select the data from starting from A1 to I37, right? So this is the range we want to export to PDF. Select that, go to the page layout, click on this print area and click on this set print area, right? You can see we are getting some dotted lines here, right? So what is that means? So starting from A to F will come in page 1 and GHI column will come in page 2, but we want everything in one page. So let's set this. So for that, go to the view menu here, click on page breaker preview here. You can see it's going showing as a page 1 and this showing as a page 2. So let's click and hold this and drag all the way to the right. Now you can see this selected range will come in page 1 only, right? So let's click on normal here, then keep the cursor anywhere and save this. So let's add a button here. Go to the insert menu, click on shapes. Let's add button here. Give a message as open form. I will give a generate invoice, right? And to call that user form, we have to write a small sub procedure. So let's go back to the VBA editor, click on insert and select module here. So here we'll write open form and here we'll say FRM invoice new dot show, right? Now let's save this. Now go back to the Excel file. Right click on this button, click on assign macro and select that code which we have just written, right? Open form. So this is the module code. So let's select that and click on OK here. Now this time, if I click on this generate invoice button, it will open this user form. So let's test this one. So we got this invoice date automatically. We got the invoice number automatically, right? So let's enter the company name here. Then next we'll enter the email address here. Then next we'll enter the phone number, the company address. Now let's add some invoice items here. 2 hours and hourly rate is 50. Click on add. You can see it got added here. So let's add another item here. Enter the number of hours as 4. This is 120. Click on add. You can see this item got added here. So let's add one more here. We'll say 6. We'll say around 140, right? So let's click on add. You can see all our invoice list items got added to this list view. And you can see all the total amount, subtotal, and the grand total is also populated here. So let's give some discount here, like it's around 50. You can see the grand total is showing as a 1370 now. Let's add some tax rate percentage as a 5%. You can see after adding this tax rate percentage, the grand total is showing up as 1441. Now let's click on generate invoice first before clicking on send invoice here. So if I click on this generate invoice, you can see the invoice is generated successfully. Click OK. Now you can see all the information got populated in this invoice sheet, right? You can see the all our item information is also populated. The customer details, the invoice number, invoice date, everything is populated, right? Now if I go back to the folder, you can see if I go to the invoices, you can see if I sort this by a date modified, this is our latest invoice, right? If I open this, you can see this is how our invoice is generated in PDF. This looks very neat and clean, right? So let's close this. Now we'll go back to the our macro file. Now this time we'll click on send invoice button, right? If I click on this send invoice, you can see invoice successfully generated and set. Now if I go back to the Outlook here, so this is our email generated. We have the customer email address, we have the subject, we have the invoice as an attachment and the basic email body. And that's it. We just built a fully functional professional invoice generator user form by just using the Excel VBA code and the user form. Imagine how much time this can save you in your daily workflow, whether you are managing clients, building projects, or handling admin tasks. We covered everything step by step by form designing, code logic, automation, and even email integration. I hope this project inspired you to explore more powerful use case with Excel VBA. And if you found this tutorial valuable, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dive Excel and VBA projects. And if you need this Excel file, please comment invoice generator in the comment box below. I will share you this Excel file directly. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching and keep automating.